The fluorescent lights in exam room 3 buzzed overhead like a wasp that wouldn't leave. I sat there staring at the black and white printout in my hand, pretending to read it even though I already knew what it said. Stage 2. Lymphoma. Not terminal, but serious. The kind of diagnosis that made you take inventory of your life. I was 38. No kids, no spouse, no real hobbies outside of work. Just me, my condo, and a mountain of projects waiting in Jira. Miles, the oncologist said gently, we caught it early. Treatment has a high success rate. I nodded once, automatic. How long's the process? 6 months, give or take. Chemo bi-weekly. You'll be tired, nauseous, sometimes worse. You'll need support. Support. Right. I left the clinic just before noon and walked back to the office through downtown traffic like nothing had changed. The sun felt artificial. The people, too fast. My phone buzzed with Slack messages, questions about timelines, dependencies, a reminder about the 2 p.m. strategy sync. I didn't tell anyone that day. Not my team, not my friends, not even HR. I told one person, Logan, my manager. We sat in his glass-walled office while he scrolled absently through his inbox. Cancer, I said flatly. He stopped typing. Jesus, are you okay? Caught it early. Chemo starts next week. I'll be in and out, but I want to keep working. I need to. He leaned back in his chair. You'll have our full support, Miles. Whatever you need. I nodded, grateful, or maybe relieved. Logan was the kind of guy who said the right things, even if his eyes never quite matched the sentiment. But I took him at his word, because that's what I did. I trusted the people I worked for. The next morning I drafted a buffer calendar, treatment days, recovery windows. I blocked off hours labeled client call or deep work, so no one would ask questions. I'd spent 10 years building a reputation as the guy who delivered. I wasn't going to let cancer change that. Not yet. By Friday, the first session hit me like a truck. I puked in the parking lot and still made it to my 10 a.m. meeting. No one noticed anything was wrong. That was the plan. Chemo didn't make me weak overnight. It chipped away in silence, fogged my brain, bruised my arms, turned meals into a negotiation. But I kept showing up, Monday to Friday. Zooms with the camera on. Slack pings answered in seconds. Half the team didn't even know I was sick. That was by design. I worked from home whenever I could, bundled under a hoodie and a blanket while pretending I wasn't freezing. Project timelines didn't care if your immune system was collapsing. Client expectations didn't shift because your blood count did. I hit every milestone. On paper, I was fine. By the second month, Logan started looping Brent into my meetings. Just in case, he said. Brent was younger, fresh out of Wharton, polished in a way that made executives smile. At first, I didn't think much of it. Backup coverage. Reasonable. Then he stopped inviting me to the 9 a.m. stand-ups. Thought you might need rest, Logan said, sipping his smoothie in our one-on-one. I'm good, I replied. I've hit every deadline. He smiled tight. I know, but we've got to stay flexible. The team needs consistency. I almost laughed. I was the most consistent thing in that department for 6 years. I built the playbook. I trained the leads. I stayed late, fixed bugs at midnight, fielded client calls on holidays while Logan was off skiing in Utah. But now that I was bald, pale, and 15 pounds lighter, I was a liability. I didn't push back, just nodded, same as always. Because loyalty still meant something to me, even if it didn't to them. At night, I'd sit in my dark apartment with the sound off on the TV, reviewing old code branches and expense, reports, anything to keep my mind off how my body was failing me and how my boss had quietly begun replacing me. Emails addressed to Brent CC'd me as an afterthought. Decisions made without looping me in. Meetings rescheduled to times I couldn't attend. The writing was on the wall. Still, I stayed the course. Logan said he supported me, and I believed him. Until the day I collapsed in the office. And everything changed. The brain fog hit first slow and subtle, like trying to think through cotton. One minute I'd be running a budget forecast, the next I'd be staring at the screen, unable to remember where I left off. Words floated away mid-sentence. Deadlines that used to live in my head like gospel now needed sticky notes and calendar pings just to stay visible. Nausea came next. I'd dry heave between meetings and pop antiemetics like mints, praying no one would notice how often I muted myself on calls. Lunch became a ritual of avoidance. Half a sandwich here, a few saltines there. Some days, just black coffee I could barely stomach. The dizziness was worse during the afternoon slumps. I'd stand too fast and everything would tilt, vision swimming, heart racing. I started taking meetings sitting down, even the ones where I'd usually stand to present. Easier to hide the weakness that way. At the office, whispers started. Small, harmless things at first. Did you notice Miles zoned out again on the Q2 review? I think he's distracted lately. Not like before. No one said the word cancer. They didn't know. Just that something was off. And people love a narrative. Logan sure did. He stopped replying to my end-of-day status reports. No comments, no likes, no good work. Just silence. The kind that fills every space like smoke, thick with implication. I walked into a meeting one Thursday on. I was supposed to lead, and found Brent already at the head of the table. My slides had been co-opted. My project listed under his name on the shared agenda. Logan offered a tight smile. Brent's just getting some extra exposure. You should be focusing on your health anyway. That's when I knew. I wasn't being supported. I was being phased out. Not all at once. Not enough to spark a legal battle. Just death by delegation. One responsibility at a time, handed to someone newer, healthier, cheaper. And I let it happen. Because my hands were shaking too hard to type straight. Because my days were built around pills and prayer. Because survival was the only project I could still own completely. But even that was slipping. It happened on a Tuesday. I hadn't eaten. The chemo from the night before still clung to my insides like poison. I'd slept maybe 2 hours, stomach twisted, skin crawling, head pounding like someone was hammering from the inside out. Still, I showed up. Button-down shirt, fresh shave, fake smile. I needed to be seen. I made it halfway down the hallway toward the conference room, before the lights above me blurred into streaks. My legs went soft, like the floor dropped half an inch without telling my body. I reached out to catch myself on the wall, but missed. Everything went sideways. Then black. When I came to, the ceiling tiles were sharp and square again, too white, too clean. Voices echoed. Someone saying my name. A woman I didn't recognize, kneeling next to me, with wide eyes and trembling hands. He's conscious, call again. Tell them it's urgent. I tried to speak. Couldn't. Something thick in my throat. Sweat soaked through my collar. My heart galloped like it knew something I didn't. I heard Brent's voice somewhere above me. Jesus. Is this like a seizure? No. Someone else said, unsure. I think he just collapsed. Paramedics arrived. Blood pressure cuff. Questions I couldn't answer. I heard someone mention HR. Another person whispered, I thought he was just tired lately. No one knew. And now they all did. I was wheeled out of the building on a stretcher in front of the entire floor. Logan didn't come down. Didn't even poke his head out of his office. I caught a glimpse of the glass wall as they rolled me by. He was on a call. Watching. Didn't even blink. At the hospital, they ran tests. Monitored vitals. IV drip in my arm. I drifted in and out of sleep like a boat in fog. The doctor told me I was dehydrated, undernourished, and overstressed. That collapsing was a warning. He used the word unsustainable. I nodded, already knowing that. But the worst part? The next morning, in my hospital gown. I checked my work email. There was nothing. No. Are you okay? No. Take the time you need. Just silence. Logan's kind of support. I woke to the steady beep of a heart monitor and the sharp smell of antiseptic. The hospital room was quiet, empty, sterile. A nurse had taped a note to the tray by my bed. Vitals stable. Doctor to check in by noon. A jug of water sat half full beside my phone, which had buzzed sometime around 6:00 a.m. Still groggy, I picked it up. There it was. Subject line: Immediate administrative action. Regarding your employment status. The sender: HR. A name I barely recognized. I opened it, blinking against the light. Effective: immediately. You are being placed on indefinite unpaid leave, pending the outcome of an internal investigation into allegations of conduct unbecoming and possible workplace misconduct. This action is not a presumption of guilt, but a procedural step to ensure neutrality while the matter is reviewed. The words blurred together, then sharpened again like a slow punch to the gut. I read it 3 times. No mention of my collapse, no acknowledgement of the ER, no "hope you're recovering," just cold HR language dressed up in disclaimers: unpaid, indefinite, misconduct. I lay back against the pillow, too stunned to move. I'd collapsed. In their hallway, in front of witnesses, and this was their response? I called Logan. Straight to voicemail. Then again. Nothing. No reply. No message. Just that same sinking silence he always wrapped himself in when he didn't want to get his hands dirty. I opened Slack from my phone. Deactivated. My email too. Locked out. I was a ghost now. 1 day ago, I was their valued team member. Today, I was a liability with a medical file. At noon, the doctor came in, smiling kindly, talking recovery timelines. I nodded, thanked him, said I'd rest. But inside, something else had started. Not grief. Not confusion. Focus. Something colder. Something that counted minutes, documented facts, and made lists. They'd taken everything I'd given me: hours, my health, my silence, and now they wanted to erase me clean. Fine. They'd made their move. Mine would come next. I stepped into my apartment like a stranger. Everything was where I'd left it. The coat still hanging on the door, dishes stacked neatly in the sink, but the air felt different. Off. Like I didn't belong here anymore. Or maybe I'd just changed too much in the last 48 hours. The voicemail from HR echoed in my head. Unpaid leave. Conduct unbecoming. I booted up my laptop, trying to find clarity, some thread to pull. I still had access to my personal email. That's when I found the message from Sashakiate, observant Sasha from UX. Someone I barely spoke to beyond small talk in the kitchen. I'm sorry. I overheard Logan talking to Brent. You need to know what's being said. Attached was a transcript. A Slack thread. Logan. We need to act before this spirals. He's using this illness as a shield. It's performance masking. Brent. So he's not really sick? Logan. He says it's chemo, but we've seen no documentation. Think about it: guy shows up, suddenly collapses after being out of it for weeks. He's creating a pattern. Brent. Wow. What should I say if people ask? Logan. Just say we're reviewing some concerns. I sat frozen. My mouth went dry. They were crafting a story. One where I was the villain. One where the cancer I'd been fighting for months was now just a tactic. Conduct unbecoming. That was the label they'd chosen. Not sick. Not employee in crisis. No. I was the manipulator now. I scrolled down. A separate forwarded email. Anonymous. Full of gossip. He's been acting weird for weeks. Maybe he's exaggerating. Trying to get out of deadlines. I mean, who even gets chemo and still works full-time. I closed the laptop, stood up, paced. It wasn't just a firing strategy anymore. It was character assassination. They were building a Casey. Subtle one, sure, but intentional. Planting doubt, twisting facts, letting the rumor mill do the dirty work. Cancer hadn't brought me down. But this was something else. It wasn't just personal. It was war. And I had receipts. By Thursday morning, I'd stopped flinching when I checked my inbox. The damage had already been done. What I needed now wasn't pity or outrage. I needed proof, paper, timelines, receipts. I started with the hospital. I requested full documentation treatment plans, discharge summaries, signed doctor's notes. Within hours, they sent everything over. Neatly formatted PDFs with my name, diagnosis, treatment cycles, and medical history. Unambiguous. Indisputable. Next came the insurance portal. I printed every chemotherapy claim, every visit, every pre-authorization. Blue Cross had approved coverage starting 3 months ago. The dates lined up perfectly with when I first told Logan what was happening. Speaking of Logan, I still had his texts. Logan, March 14, 10, 8 a.m. Let me know how your next chemo round goes. We'll adjust your workload as needed. Logan, April 2, 6, 19 p.m. Don't push too hard. Just keep me posted on your recovery. I screenshotted everything. Even the messages where he ghosted me after my collapse. Silence tells a story too. Then, I dug deeper. My email account had been locked, but I still had offline backup sketched attachments, meeting invites, call recordings from client syncs. I started building a folder labeled Timeline of Retaliation. Every meeting I was pulled from. Every project reassigned. The slow fade from essential to expendable. And then, buried in an old Slack export from before my account was disabled, I found a memo I wasn't meant to see. Internal HR chatter. Employee has failed to disclose adequate documentation supporting medical leave. Reports suggest inconsistencies in behavior. Inconsistencies. That was rich. I opened my treatment calendar. 8 sessions. All documented. All dated. I matched them against project timelines, email chains, and meeting minutes. On days they said, I disappeared. I'd submitted code, attended stand-ups, sent deliverables. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. They weren't just trying to fire me. They were trying to rewrite the story before I could tell it. But I had the truth. And now I had the paper trail. Everything they thought I'd quietly let go was putting into a single file. It was growing by the hour. By the time I was finished, it wouldn't just be receipts. It would be a weapon. I called HR 5 times the next morning. No answer. No voicemail. Just a robotic message that said, "This number is no longer monitored." I tried the general company Linera directed. I emailed 3 different people using my personal Gmail, carefully writing subject lines like, clarification request, medical leave status, and concern regarding insurance interruption. Still nothing. Not even an auto response. It didn't feel like bureaucracy anymore. It felt like exile. I checked the employee portal. My profile was gone. Just a 404 error. User not found. My name had been scrubbed like I'd never existed. No benefits, no history, no contact information. I went to log into the health insurance site. Access denied. I stared at the screen for a full minute, then called the provider directly. After 20 minutes on hold, a rep picked up. "Hi. I'm calling to check the status of my coverage," I said. "There's been an issue logging in." She typed for a moment. "It looks like your employer has flagged your policy as under review. There's a hold on claims processing until eligibility is confirmed. My next chemo appointment is in 2 days. I'm sorry, sir. Until we receive confirmation from your employer, We can't guarantee coverage. I hung up. My hands were shaking. They'd cut me off. Not just from Slack or email or paychecks, but from my treatment. From the very thing keeping me alive. No warning. No explanation. Just a quiet little switch flipped behind the scenes. I sat in the dark with my laptop on my knees, staring at the blinking cursor in a blank email draft. To HR? To Logan? To anyone? I closed it. They weren't going to answer. They wanted me to vanish. Quietly. Gratefully. To walk away with my head down, whispering about miscommunications and internal confusion. But they forgot something. I was still alive. And I was done being quiet. They'd ghosted the wrong guy. Now it was my turn. It was just after midnight when I got the message. Sasha M. Subject: I shouldn't be sending this, but I can't stay quiet. I stared at the screen. Sasha, from UX. Always polite. Always quiet. The kind of junior employee people overlook in meetings. She didn't use exclamation points. She didn't overshare. She just did her job. But apparently, she'd been watching everything. Her message was short. I heard what Logan said about you. I've seen what they're doing. I saved some things. I hope they help. Attached were 5 PDFs. I opened the first one. A Slack transcript. A private channel I'd never been part of. Logan, Miles is spiraling. We need to think about long-term continuity. I don't think he's reliable anymore. Brent, should I take point on the client rollout? Logan, start prepping. Quietly. The second file was worse. Meeting notes from a strategy session 2 weeks after I told Logan about the cancer. Contingency planning. Transition key accounts to Brent. Begin grooming him for Q3 leadership showcase. 2 weeks. I hadn't even finished my first chemo cycle. They were already replacing me behind closed doors. The third file was a memo Sasha had pulled from a shared drive that didn't have my name on it anymore. Recommend reevaluation of Miles D's leadership readiness. Recent performance suggests volatility. Brent J. presents stronger long-term stability. Volatility. That's what they called chemo side effects now. Sasha included a final message. I know this puts me at risk. But I couldn't sit through another meeting where they pretended you were the problem. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I sat there for a long time, reading her words again and again. Gratitude wasn't the right feeling. Not yet. But it reminded me I wasn't crazy. That someone had seen it too. I replied simply, "Thank you. This matters more than you know." She'd taken a risk. Now it was my turn. The documents I'd been collecting weren't just notes anymore. They were testimony. And the quiet guy they'd tried to erase? He was about to make some noise. I drafted it in silence. 2 days straight. No music. No distractions. Just me, my laptop, and a folder labeled Truth that was now bigger than my resume. It opened like this. To the Meridian Board of Directors and Legal Counsel. Subject: formal complaint, retaliation, medical discrimination, and workplace misconduct. Then came the body calm, methodical, and lethal in its precision. I laid it out like a system audit. Diagnosis confirmed on date with attached medical certification. Disclosure made to Logan date with confirmed written acknowledgement. Timeline of project removals, stripped responsibilities, and shifting team dynamics backed with Slack logs, calendar changes, and emails. My collapse in the office. ER report attached. HR's response. Unpaid leave, no contact, deactivation of benefits. Logan's internal comments, documented by Sasha, corroborated with screenshots. Sasha's memo. Testimony from a direct witness to discrimination and replacement strategy. No emotion. No anger. Just facts. At the end, I listed damages. Health insurance disruption. Lost wages. Character defamation. Emotional distress. And then I added the closing line. If this complaint is ignored or dismissed, I will escalate externally, including, but not limited to federal EEOC filings, press disclosures, and legal action. I didn't send it from Gmail. I called an old college friend, Marcus, an employment attorney in Seattle. Told him everything. Write it, he said. I'll review it. We'll send it from my office. That's exactly what we did. Monday morning, the letter went out from Marcus, R., at olsonlawpartners.com, with a CC to my personal inbox. Time-stamped 8:01 a.m. No more Slack messages. No more quiet suffering. This wasn't a plea for help. This was a declaration. They wanted to paint me as unstable. I was going to show them exactly how stable I could be when I was holding the truth in my hands. By Wednesday morning, I knew they were scared. Logan didn't respond to the whistleblower letter directly. HR didn't reach out. No calls, no statements, just silence. Until it wasn't. A coworker texted me a link. Have you seen this? It's blowing up. The post was on Reddit, anonymous, buried in a corporate drama thread filled with tech gossip and whistleblower takedowns. Project manager at Meridian Technologies caught faking medical condition for sympathy leave. Entire team blindsided. Insiders say he lied about cancer to avoid accountability. HR is investigating. No names. But the timeline, the role, the company, it was me. Thinly veiled enough to dodge legal liability, but sharp enough to cut. I refreshed the page. The comments poured in. Scammer. Chemo faker? That's low. This guy sounds unhinged. Honestly, if you can still work full-time, are you really sick? Then someone shared a screenshot. An internal Slack message from 6 weeks ago. My tone clipped. Frustrated. Taken out of context and now weaponized as proof I was erratic. I recognized the file name in the screenshot. It had been pulled from my deleted company folder. Logan had leaked it, or someone under him, selectively, surgically designed to erode my credibility, not all at once, but in pieces. Let the internet do the rest. I searched my name. Nothing yet. But it was only a matter of time. The comments had already decided. I wasn't a man recovering from chemo. I was a case study in toxic employees. I turned off my phone. Sat on the floor of my apartment, arms around my knees, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. They were rewriting the story, one anonymous post at a time. And for the first time since this all started, I felt it. Not just betrayal. Fear. If I stayed silent, their version would win. Rumors would outpace the truth. My name, my work, my life reduced to a cautionary tale of a liar who faked being sick for sympathy. But they'd miscalculated one thing. I wasn't the one who leaked lies. I was the one who kept receipts. And now, it was time to use them. I didn't want to be the story, but they made me one. Thursday morning, I emailed Caitlin Roy, a journalist I'd followed for years. She'd written for Wired, ProPublica, The Atlantic, heard stories, real stories. She didn't do fluff. She did facts. Subject line: I collapsed from chemo in my office. They fired me the next day. Underneath, I wrote, I have documentation, medical records, internal memos, witnesses, a retaliation trail a mile long. I was diagnosed with cancer, kept working through chemo, collapsed at my job, and was put on unpaid leave. Then they called me a liar. If you're interested, I'll talk. Everything on record. She responded in 20 minutes. Let's talk. Today. We met over Zoom. I showed her everything: my hospital records, Slack transcripts, HR's silence, Sasha's memos. She barely blinked, just typed and nodded. I've seen corporate retaliation before, she said. But this is systemic. They tried to erase you. 2 days later, the article went live. I collapsed from chemo in my office. They fired me. The next day. My name was in the headline. My face beneath it. It detailed the diagnosis, the betrayal, the internal memo trail, the Reddit smear, the insurance cancellation, every fact sourced, every claim verified. The internet exploded. Thousands of shares in the first hour. LinkedIn posts, tweets, industry leaders tagging Meridian's CEO. Is this how you treat your people? Former employees chimed in. I worked with Miles. This tracks. Cancer survivors shared their own stories. Legal advocacy groups reached out. Public opinion didn't hesitate. They believed me. Finally, by nightfall, Meridian issued a generic press release. We take employee wellness seriously. But it was too late. The fire had started. I wasn't invisible anymore. They wanted me gone. But now the whole world was watching. By Monday I had lawyers. Not just 1A team. Civil rights attorneys. Workplace discrimination specialists. Pro bono. Thanks to a nonprofit that reached out after Caitlin's article went viral. They'd handled cases like this before: quiet terminations, retaliatory HR policies, corporate smear campaigns. But even they were stunned by the documentation I had. Most people don't keep records this clean. One said, flipping through the folder I'd labeled, Evidence. Day 1 to collapse. I work in project management. I replied. I don't delete receipts. We moved fast. The lawsuit was filed within 72 hours. Wrongful termination. Defamation. Disability. Discrimination. Interference with medical care. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. We named Meridian Technologies, Logan Weller individually, and several unnamed HR officers as defendants pending discovery. Within hours of the filing, local outlets picked it up. National coverage followed by mourning. Headlines ran, Man fired after Chemo collapse sues former employer. Meridian faces multi-million-dollar lawsuit amid retaliation allegations. Reddit flipped. The same threads that once dissected me now turned on Logan. New docs show he had cancer the whole time. CEO better run, this is about to be Enron level bad. Inside Meridian. Chaos. We'd subpoenaed access logs, Slack transcripts, archived emails. Everything they'd buried. We'd dig up. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. But most of all, I wanted the world to see what happens when someone like me, someone quiet, someone sick, refuses to lie down and disappear. The legal team handled the paperwork. I handled the waiting. For the first time in months, I felt steady, focused, and not alone. They thought they'd broken me. But all they did was make me sharp. It took 4 days. On Friday morning, a memo leaked from inside Meridian. Effective immediately. Logan Weller is being placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of an internal review. The language was polished, cautious. But the meaning was clear. He was done. Brent resigned quietly that weekend. No farewell email. No LinkedIn post. Just a silent exit from the company directory. Then HR called my attorney. They offered a private settlement. 6 figures. An apology statement. Clean exit paperwork if. I signed a non-disclosure agreement and withdrew the lawsuit. I didn't even hesitate. No. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about every person who'd been gaslit out of their job, who'd worked through pain and been told they weren't enough. Every cancer patient who'd been called unreliable. Every employee who collapsed at their desk and was told it was their fault. The board tried to wait it out, but the pressure didn't stop. Employees staged a walkout. Anonymous letters from current staff flooded social media. Shareholders demanded answers. By the end of the week, Meridian issued a press release. We have launched a third-party investigation into recent claims regarding retaliation, discrimination, and ethical violations within our leadership. Translation: We're trying to survive this. Too late. The story had legs, and I wasn't done telling it. They wanted quiet, but they trained me to manage systems, and now I was tearing theirs apart. 1 year later, I walked out of my final oncology appointment with a clean bill of health and a nurse's quiet smile. Remission. The word felt heavier than I expected. Not a finish line, just a pause. A chance to breathe again. My hair was coming back, my appetite had returned, and the circles under my eyes no longer looked like bruises. I was still tired, still scarred, but I was standing. The lawsuit settled 3 weeks before the trial date. It didn't go quietly. The final amount was never disclosed publicly, but the number had 2 commas. More than I ever expected. More than I needed. It wasn't about the payout. It was about the headline that followed. Meridian settles with former employee over chemo retaliation case. Logan Weller didn't just lose his job. The industry blackballed him, publicly. After internal emails came out some with words no HR manual could spin, he was labeled toxic leadership. No one would touch him. Not in tech. Not in consulting. He disappeared from LinkedIn. Within days. The HR lead who signed off on my insurance lockout resigned before the board could vote on her termination. Quietly, like a stone slipping into deep water. Meridian restructured. Publicly apologized. Privately panicked. But I didn't care about their crisis management anymore. That wasn't my problem. I had other plans. The speaking requests started small nonprofits, HR conferences, employee unions. Then came consulting. I reviewed corporate disability policies, helped companies draft inclusive benefits packages, made sure no one else had to suffer in silence while people in glass offices played strategy with their lives. But the real work started later. On a cold Monday morning in D.C., I stood outside a government building holding a folder. Employee Rights Advocacy Bill, Draft 1. Inside were the bones of new legislation. Protection for chronically ill workers, penalties for medical discrimination, safeguards against employer retaliation during active treatment, language crafted with the help of lawyers, survivors, advocates, people like me. I stepped through the glass doors. No fanfare, no cameras, just purpose. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was legacy. They tried to erase me, but I became the one thing they feared most. Visible, and I wasn't going anywhere. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.